Welcome back to Talk Property to Me. My name is Brad East.
I'm Aaron Downie, and today we're talking about the top 10 undersupplied markets in Australia and would we buy them?
Perfect. So good, nice, quick, punchy episode for everyone. We'll get straight into it. So number one on our list is Fremantle in Greater Perth.
Yeah.
So key stats for that. Population grew by 14% in the last decade. Mm-hmm. Home listed for sale dropped by 29%. And new building approvals fell by 77% over the last 3 years. So what's your verdict on this one, Aaron?
Yeah, it's from an investment perspective, there's better alternatives. It's not a complete no, but from an investment perspective, I would choose other markets. Fremantle in Perth is a great owner-occupied market, and the fact that it's severely undersupplied, I would say if you're an owner-occupier going there, you're going to do really well.
100% agree. Good owner-occupier area. Lots of breweries. It's beautiful down on the water there. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. So as an investment market, keep looking. Next one is Bayswater, Bassendean, is it?
Yeah, that's just the area. So Bayswater, the suburb itself.
Again, in Greater Perth area. So population has increased by 7% in the last decade. What's the average population growth? About 1.1 per year?
Yeah, that's slightly less actually. Population over the past decade, that's around 0.7?
Yeah, so it's a little bit lower than the overall.
Yeah.
Which can be a bit of a concern, can't it?
I mean, you want it growing at least baseline state average. It may not have grown because they just might not have the households there to sustain that growth.
Yeah, and I think if you looked at the 10-year average, probably the last year or two has spiked.
Yeah, exactly.
So that previous 8 years before that was probably next to zero.
Yeah.
So the average over 10 years is quite low, but if you take a snapshot out of the last couple of years, it's probably quite high.
Yeah, for sure. So for that one, Bayswater, again, good owner-occupied market, very good positioning in that Perth region. For investors, again, you're not going to do bad, but I think there's better markets to be buying in.
Yep. Another one, Perth. A lot of Perth ones today. So Jundalup. Sorry if I said that wrong. But population grew by 4% in the last decade, so even lower again.
Yeah.
Home sales have decreased by 31%, and building approvals dropped 62% in the last 3 years.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those ones where it's a good position in Perth, and it's actually one of the outer suburbs for that Perth market, northern Perth market. It's again, owner-occ, you're going to do fine. Investors, you're going to do fine. But I think there are still other markets. I think that the population needs to start to increase in that market, and it's most likely only going to drive because of that undersupply of properties.
Yeah. So again, could be other areas in Perth that might get a better return.
Yeah.
I would argue that if it's heavily publicised in podcasts and YouTube and everything like that, you've kind of missed the boat on that suburb.
And that's the thing, when we're looking at all of these, we're talking about this now.
Yeah.
This will be on multiple other, property websites or written in articles and white papers or whatever they are. Buyers agents and good investors have already done their research and have been buying in these markets for the last few months. Yeah,
you got to sort of sit back and think of some of the motives behind people or some buyers agents pushing these suburbs really aggressively. Have they purchased bulk amounts in that area a year or two ago, and now they're trying to manufacture some growth in that area? Yeah. There's a lot of things you need to look at and make your own decisions.
100%.
So don't listen to us.
Don't listen to us. And the thing is with investing, it's all time horizons as well.
Correct.
But we're just talking about supply and demand at the moment.
Yep.
So all of these are undersupplied, but supply isn't the only thing that you need to take into consideration. And a market might only be undersupplied for 12 months.
So the next one is Mackay. Mackay in North Queensland. Population 7%, or up 7%, so I'm assuming up from the previous decade before. Yep. Home sales have declined by 40%. Building approvals dropped 50% in the last 3 years.
Yeah. So, and that's a good example right there. Home sales have declined by 40%, so the market's going to do well over the next 12 months. Once those sales start to pick up, rates decrease, people start doing their migration and changing of houses, and then that once those sales start to pick up, there's going to be an increased supply in that market, and you're going to see it drop off.
Yeah.
So for me, what were you going to say, Brad?
I was up in Mackay a few years ago, and it still feels like it's got that industrial feel.
Yeah, it
I
does.
think it's still a little bit off.
Yeah.
Getting that big growth when it starts to convert from a industrial feel, like what happened in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Might take a little bit of time, but for now, it's a bit of a no.
I did some research on this Mackay market just a bit earlier. One of our subscribers asked about Mackay. I dropped some comments in our previous video on Mackay. There's a few markets that I would buy in over others if you were buying there for owner-occ. But again, if it's from an investment perspective, I would stay away from Mackay and buy in some other markets.
Another industrial area is Gladstone in regional Queensland. Population grew by 8% in the last 10 years. Homes listed for sale dropped by 31%. Building approvals are down 48 over the last 3 years, 48%. We've got that down as another no.
Yeah. Another no. Gladstone's very similar to that Mackay area. Limited economy in that.
It's quite isolated too.
It's very isolated, yeah.
It's got a small economy there, which seems to be self-sufficient, but it is very industry dominant.
Yeah.
Big ports. I think there's a gas facility or something there.
Yeah.
Very single industry driven. Another no.
If you look at historical growth for Mackay and Gladstone, it's very similar to some of the Perth markets where it just plateaus for a decade and then increases significantly over a short period of time.
And very driven by whatever resources they're producing in that area and the price of that resource.
Yeah.
So Prospect Walkerville in South Australia. Never heard of it.
Yeah. It's just outside of the city. So Prospect is actually one of my top picks for this list. I think it's slightly higher typical price point for most investors. I think it's starting to get up around the $900 to $1 million mark. So it's mostly an owner-occupied market, but a great little area if you can afford to spend that much money on investment and have 3 to 4% yields.
Yep. So that's a yes for both investors and owner-occupier.
Yeah.
Mitcham in South Australia.
Yeah, Mitcham, it's a very similar to market to Prospect. Undersupplied, good increasing population, a lot of infrastructure happening around that area. For me, investors and owner-occs, good purchase.
And Port Adelaide obviously in South Australia as well.
Yeah, again, we can just touch on the undersupply. All of these are undersupplied. The problem that I see with Port Adelaide is it's a yes from me from a market from a growth perspective overall, but be very particular on the property type that you purchase there, because there's been a lot of new builds over the past 5 years.
So is that like big apartment buildings?
Apartment blocks, townhouses.
So that's going to be the new sort of high-risey sort of residential area, is it?
I don't think it'll be the new high-rise, but supply definitely increased over the last 5 years. So I'm not sure what's led to this decrease in the market. Maybe building companies going into liquidation or they just don't have it's not feasible for them to do developments anymore. But it's one of those markets where you want to be researching the property that you're buying because you don't know who the builder or developer was. Is it still under the builder's warranty? And I'd be doing a lot of research in this market before buying.
So next one is Tea Tree Gully, South Australia. So key stats on that one is growing demand with limited supply. So that usually leans towards a yes.
Yeah, and we could elaborate on that, but it is both supply and demand. It's undersupplied and increased demand. And again, Tea Tree Valley, it's in the outer suburbs of Adelaide. But again, investors and owner-occs, I think it's a good market.
You can say this next name, mate. Onka Paringa. Onka Paringa in South Australia. So strong growth with limited new housing approvals. Again, that's a supply and demand, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just supply and demand. That's all we're talking about here. They're severely undersupplied markets. All of these ones in Adelaide are markets that I would be buying in.
So as a bit of a wrap-up, it's pretty clear that South Australia is really falling into that category of lots of demand, not enough supply.
Yeah.
Could that be the new Perth?
And that's the thing, there's been a lot of changes in Melbourne over, over the past 12 months, especially, they've introduced more taxes in Melbourne. There's a lot of investors leaving that market or choosing not to buy in that market, which then just puts more pressure on the other more affordable markets, Perth and Adelaide.
Yeah.
So, like I said, all of these markets are undersupplied. Again, depending on what the investment strategy is and the time horizon, will depend on whether they're markets to buy in.
Yep. So that's it for today. If you want any sort of tailored verdicts on any certain areas, throw it in the comment. We're happy to look at those, and we have done that on many occasions.
Yeah.
And we'll wait to see you guys on the next one.
Yeah, I've actually got reports on all of these markets. So if anyone wants one,
send them through.
Yeah, send it through.
Reach out.
Send it to them.
When you leave a message, it is actually us replying. So go nuts.
See you on the next one.
Thanks.